things that were the positive outcomes during the session, and some of the things that we feel that we have more work to do. And so we'll be covering those particular issues today. But before I begin, I would like to really thank the members of both bodies, whether those that are on the podium as well as those that are not present today, and our staff who work tirelessly to make certain that our members are prepared for all the legislative bills that they introduce, as well as those bills that they were supporting and those that they were trying to defeat. As many of you are aware, the Democrats begin this session with a clear written agenda that specifically spelled out our priorities and detailed specific, meaningful legislation that will help Alabama become safer, healthier, more inclusive, and prosperous. And so this agenda includes items such as healthcare, small business and the economy, criminal justice reform, voting and social justice, education, and law enforcement reform. Although it's been very difficult times, we've found ways to make tremendous progress in each of these important areas. We work together in a bipartisan manner and look for ways to build agreed upon legislation to move our state forward. I say this from some perspective of some of the issues that we've been able to deal with as in a bipartisan manner. I know that our colleagues in the Senate, as well as the House, have been working on legislation to, whether it's procurement, whether it's access to capital, whether in other efforts, whether it's police reform, which was led by the Black Caucus under the leadership of Senator Vivian Figers, or whether it was issues that dealt with education. As you'll see, there are a number of issues that, bills that we've dealt with that passed both houses, and I'll cover a few of those particular bills and turn it over to the Senate Minority Leader, Bobby Singleton. The Innovation Commission Corporation Authority was created, HB 540, a bill that was supported, that had bipartisan support, that will allow more opportunities for individuals to make investments and focus on innovation within the state of Alabama. Representative Gray also introduced a bill that creates the Innovate Alabama Matching Grant program, which will provide opportunities for when we receive federal small business grants from the federal level as well as the state, and being able to transfer those into research grants or both. Senator Singleton and others have been working tirelessly on issues that deal with economic development, especially in minority communities. Early in the session, we passed the Jobs Act, which also included language that attract and recruit minority-owned businesses that want to move to the state of Alabama, giving them more of an incentive up to 4% instead of the traditional 3% incentive package, to make it more lucrative and give them an opportunity to move into the state of Alabama and provide job opportunities throughout the state of Alabama. And so there are a number of issues that we've had an opportunity to work together on. The Growing Alabama Jobs Act that I mentioned was just one of those pieces of legislation. Late in the session, which is a bill we'll be dealing with hopefully today, HB 473, which deals with access to capital. It is rural and minority-owned access to capital, which all of my colleagues that are here on the stage, as well as those that are not present, work hard on to make certain that minority-owned companies and companies that are in the rural communities have an opportunity to have access to capital. Because many instances they are certainly left behind and out of the conversation. Evidence of that was with the PPP loan, where you only saw 12% of Black-owned companies throughout the United States actually got access to the PPP loan. Whether it's the Revive Alabama or Revive Alabama Plus, which was a race to getting in front of the line. In many instances, those companies don't have the internal controls to really be able to respond on the first day. And so when you're giving out capital based upon those particular criteria and you're not intentional, it leaves some communities behind. And so this particular piece of legislation is extremely important because of that. And I know that Representative Drummond will be talking about the piece of legislation that she worked so hard on relative to procurement, and so and also data gathering. And so But without further ado, I'll turn it over to the Senate Minority Leader, Senator Bobby Singleton.
Good morning. Thank you, Leader Daniels. As Leader Daniels said, that all of those bills that he talked about came through both houses. We were very cautious about what we were going to get passed and those that we would get put on our agenda. But most of all, we were able to fight off a lot of bills that we thought were bad bills. The riot bill that passed the House but did not be able to come up in the Senate, simply because we were able to sit down with leadership, talk about what Alabama moving forward. We looked at the fact that Huntsville will shoot out the next rocket to Mars. And when you're talking about the state of Alabama, don't need to be looking in the rearview mirror. And so the Innovation Commission brought a lot of sense to leaders in the Senate minds to say, we don't need to have that stain on the state of Alabama, so therefore we won't bring this bill to the agenda. So we applaud the bipartisan leadership to work with us to make sure that we didn't get bad bills like the riot bill on our agenda. We've been working in small numbers in the Senate, but yet and still we continue to push our agenda. As I said, that Barbara Drummond, Representative Drummond, who worked so hard on the procurement bill, we worked very hard and tirelessly over the entire summer, just trying to get great language to make sure, and I applaud her for the work that she did with that. Senator Figures, through the crime bills, making sure that we were just on with banks just this past week, making sure that we talked about access to capital outside of 473. So we, as a bipartisan group, and also as a partisan group, as Democrats, we're here to say that our agenda is a strong agenda. We're here to protect families. We're here to make sure that we educate our children, and we're making sure that we keep our society safe. Leader Daniels.
Thank you, Senator Singleton. And one of the things that I'd like to say before turning it over to other members of the legislature, I'll be turning it over to Representative Coleman. But, you know, in all, we felt that this was a decent session, despite all of the divisions on pieces of legislation. We still remain very focused on voting and expanding access. There is a tremendous contrast between our agenda on voting and the other side's agenda on voting. We've seen a number of bills that come through that did not expand access, and so we certainly fought those particular bills vigorously. But we feel that bills like early voting and opportunities like that with Representative Thomas Jackson or Representative Laura Hall with the no excuse absentee bill, those are bills that we felt that should have received a decent shot, at least given their day on the House floor. And we felt that those bills were expand access to folks in both parties. And so I think that sometimes we're allowing bills, and especially voting bills, to divide us when at the end of the day we should be focusing on expanding access and instead of suppressing access to the ballot box. But without further ado, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Assistant Minority Leader, Representative Marika Coleman.
Thank you so much. Let me publicly thank Leader Daniels for his leadership in the Alabama House in moving forward an agenda that we believe would be beneficial to all Alabamians. Again, I'm Representative Marika Coleman from Jefferson County. I want to put some numbers into perspective. Out of the 140 members of the Alabama legislature combined bodies, there are only 35 Democrats. We are in a super minority, but we are small in number, but strong in fight. And so even with that, we've been successful in moving legislation forward in a bipartisan manner. Law enforcement accountability is one, though, we have some work to do on. When members of law enforcement break the laws they have sworn to uphold or violate civil and human rights of any suspect or person in their custody, they must be held accountable. Our criminal justice system must be focused on reform, rehabilitation, and public safety, not warehousing non-violent offenders based on draconian drug laws or legal technicalities that stack the deck against minorities and people of color. In order to build or rebuild trust between the community and law enforcement must reform its policies and tactics prioritizing the elimination of racial profiling and excessive use of force. So we're very proud this session that House Bill 411 introduced by our colleague, Representative McCampbell, which would recreate a law or create a law enforcement officer employee database. It passed this session. It would require law enforcement agencies to report complaints, disciplinary actions, and background information to the Alabama Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission. Again, this legislation passed both houses and was sent to the governor for signature. Another piece of legislation that I sponsored along with Senator Smitherman would define and prohibit racial profiling. That bill actually did not end up passing, but it specifically relates to traffic stops and the handling of complaints and the reporting and collection of data on injuries to state and local law enforcement officers. It's those types of reforms that we need to move forward with in the state of Alabama, and hopefully next session we will be able to move forward with that in a bipartisan manner. As it relates to criminal justice reform, House Democrats support a comprehensive and pragmatic approach to the state's criminal justice challenges and urgent prison crisis. And we do know we have a urgent prison crisis right now. We must examine evidence-based, comprehensive solutions, including community-based treatment and supervision alternatives that are both cost-effective and more effective in actually reducing recidivism and violence within our prisons, and not just try to build our way out of the prison crisis that we have. Also, early in the session, Representative Hall introduced House Bill 36, which provides guidelines for restraining pregnant prisoners. It's long been known that use of restraints on pregnant women in prisons may pose serious health risks to not only the mother, but also the child. And some may even consider it an abuse of human rights. So in short, true prison reform includes serious discussions and consideration of practical and long overdue reforms to bail, probation, expungement, and sentencing guidelines that currently resemble wealth-based incarceration. So House Democrats support applying technical violator reforms to all parolees and probationers, and we've had several pieces of legislation sponsored this year as well. Further, we support applying habitual felony offender and drug trafficking reforms retroactively. And we have to do something about decriminalizing marijuana. We need to have an open, honest discussion about that in the state of Alabama. Finally, as it relates to social justice, Alabama Democrats stand strong in our belief that diversity is our greatest strength, and that it's time to move forward and to a more just and equitable future for our state and for our children. So we believe that symbolic steps such as removing Confederate monuments from our state parks, eliminating the Confederate State Trooper patch, and abolishing state-sanctioned celebrations of Confederate holidays are necessary to actually say that we are inclusive, equitable, and a healing Alabama. I was very proud to pass Amendment 4 with you all in the state of Alabama to remove this racist language from the Alabama State Constitution, but that's symbolic. Not only should we remove it from the state constitution, we've got to remove it from the hearts and the minds of those folks in the state of Alabama for everybody to feel like they live in an equitable Alabama. So without further ado now, I will turn it over to our Vice Chairperson, Representative Drummond.
Good morning. I too would like to thank the leadership, not only of the House, Leader Daniels, but also Minority Leader Bobby Singleton. When you look at what we have done this session, it has been with great collaboration with the Senate and also the House working together. I want to talk about healthcare, education, and voting rights. First, the depth and the extent of the crisis caused by last year's COVID pandemic has shown us how urgent it is for Alabama to strengthen its healthcare infrastructure. Prior to the pandemic, Alabama had already seen 17 rural hospital closures since 2010. a rise in uninsured worker, a profound lack of adequate mental health resources, and dangerous physician shortage. In other words, COVID brought out the skeletons in Alabama's healthcare closet, and it is time for us to address it. We really, as Democrats, I know that both our leaders in the House and the Senate, they've been working vigorously as well as members, but we don't care what we call it. We've got to strengthen the healthcare infrastructure for Alabama, because it means not only lives, but access to a better Alabama. We have done a great job this session of building up the business infrastructure. We have got to build up the healthcare infrastructure, because if a worker is not healthy and getting a livable wage, that won't move our mark any further than where we are today. So we remain vigilant on wanting to build up Medicaid infrastructure in the state of Alabama. Representative Hall introduced House Bill 431, which would expand postpartum Medicaid coverage up to 1 year after birth. This bill remained in committee. The public support was very high. Unfortunately, it did not get out. But we have got to do better. As Alabamians, we've got to move the mark. House Democrats successfully addressed other health care issues, such as House Bill 273, which would raise the legal age of the possession of tobacco and nicotine products from 19 to 21. This is all about the safety of our young people and getting these bad actors as it relates to vaping in the state of Alabama. Representative Jackson introduced House Bill 76, which involved public K-12 schools that would create a seizure-safe school act. That is something that we need for our young people, because we know that what we've gone through. They're not only dealing with mental health issues, they're dealing with safe issues as far as seizures are concerned. Alabama House Democrats remain determined in the goal to ensure that every Alabamian has access to quality and affordable health care. We will continue to make this our cornerstone of our agenda. Education. As we turn our attention to education, Alabama House Democrats strongly supported a 2% cost of living increase for our educators and public employees. When you look at the education budget, House Democrats understand that our teachers and school employees are often overworked and underpaid. We believe that much is needed to be done to recruit and retain quality teachers for our school children. That's why Alabama Democrats worked across the aisle with House Republicans to support the passage of Senate Bill 327, sponsored by Senator Orr and Chasteen, to establish the Teacher Excellence and Accountability for Math and Science Teacher Salary Structure program, because this is an innovative way of getting these hard-to-fill teachers into our rural schools, and it's going to move our mark for education. This is probably one of the most innovative education budgets that we have ever passed. So we're real proud of that. That is why Representative Anthony Daniels sponsored HB 283, a bill that would make the Alabama School of Fine Arts Foundation, the Alabama High School of Mathematics and Science Foundation, and the Alabama School of Cyber Technology and Engineering Foundation exempt from state and local taxes. This is where our future is. We're moving in a technology engineering area. This is an important step to ensure that all students, not just some, but all students have every available dollar and resources to successfully compete in today's high economy. We also, another key area was HB 97, which would require mental health awareness training for K-12 school employees. And that bill was sponsored by Representative Tashina Morris. We're so supportive of that bill. Representative Warren also sponsored HB 208 that requires a child to successfully complete kindergarten. That bill has not moved forward yet, but it's still in, this bill was passed in the House, was passed in the House in February, and it's also being considered in the Senate. Of course, there's a lot of talk about Representative Gray's yoga bill, and it has already passed both houses. It is now headed over to the governor, and Representative Gray is going to conference committee. Was going to conference committee, but that bill has gotten a whole lot of exposure thanks to many of you that are in this room. But we also, House Democrats continue to make education a top priority. We also are looking at voting rights. Simply put, voting is the cornerstone of our democracy. We've got to do everything, not just as Democrats, but as Americans and as Alabamians, to ensure that we do everything to safeguard our democracy. We have done several things this session, which was outlined by my colleague, Representative Coleman, and they did not get on the floor, like allowing no excuse absentee voting, early voting, automatic voting registration upon the age of 18, and eliminating the pay fines and the fees to regain the right to vote.
Saturday voting?
Saturday voting, which was very successful in the state of Alabama. So those have not moved, but they still are part of the Democrat agenda. I can't say enough how proud I am of the Democrats in the Senate as well in the House. We worked together and we made some things change as it relates to the procurement process and moving the ball, not only for minority businesses, for small businesses. When you put in combination all of the legislations that we passed this session, it is going to embolden our small businesses in the state of Alabama. I want to turn the podium over to Senator Vivian Davis-Figures, because she pulled us together this summer in a way that we have never ever did before. We became organized, we became methodical about what we're going to do. So, Senator Figures.
Come on, Senator.
Thank you, Representative Drummond. It was my pleasure to pull us together this past summer, after George Floyd was killed before us in plain view. That really affected all of us, and it pushed us and gave us the momentum and inspiration that we needed to help push Alabama forward. And we knew that there was systemic racism, and each of us felt that we needed to do what we could to eradicate systemic racism in Alabama. So we got together and we came up with all of the problems as we saw them at that particular time in various categories, such as law enforcement, in education, in healthcare, in the business world. And we presented that to the governor. We went to the governor, and I'd like to applaud the governor as well, who received our letter stating those concerns, and she got us together with the Business Council of Alabama, with all of the law enforcement agencies in the state of Alabama, with education, with the higher education. We met with the president from Auburn University, and the university from Auburn University and from the University of Alabama. So because of all of those meetings and us getting together, this is why you see much of this legislation that has been introduced, or that was introduced this past session. I'm also happy to say, as Senator Singleton said, we just had a meeting with bankers this past week. That is an ongoing work that is in place, because we want to make sure that African American businesses in the state of Alabama have every opportunity to succeed. Because of systemic racism, there have been so many things that have been put in their paths as obstacles, which has kept them from being able to achieve their highest best. And we all benefit as a result of it, because that increases revenue. It gives people jobs so that they can have livable wages, as was discussed. I think Representative Drummond, Representative Coleman said that. People have to have health care. They have to have livable wages if we are to move Alabama forward from being one of the states that ranks last in almost every area that truly counts in this country. So we're working with John Turner from Regions Bank, who's president of Regions Bank in the state of Alabama, along with Katie Britt, president and CEO of the Business Council of Alabama. And we are pushing that. We're working with Nichelle Nix, director of the Minority Affairs Department, along from the governor's office and people in the governor's office, to make sure. We talked about the procurement database, but we're also working on a database of all African American businesses within the state of Alabama. That is our goal, so that we can get to them and give them the resources, tools, and services they need to succeed. Because when they succeed, we all succeed as Alabamians. I could not have been happier with leadership in Senator Singleton and Representative Daniels, our caucus leader, chair, Senator Linda Coleman Madison, all of my other colleagues, Representative Coleman, Representative Drummond from Mobile. So, all of us working together. We are small in number, but we do put up a really good fight. One thing that I will have to, and I'll end it with it, we will be back with more legislation going in the right direction. And we will always do what we can to try to move Alabama forward in spite of some. But one bill that was introduced by the Democrats this session that did not get to see the light of day even in a committee meeting, which actually was introduced in the Senate. It actually had 6 Democrats and 20 Republicans on that bill. And it did not come out of committee because one of the Republicans that did not sign on that bill kept it in his committee. And that bill was the bill that separates the holidays of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert E. Lee. And as you know, Robert E. Lee was a state holiday when the Martin Luther King birthday became a national holiday, which put it on that same day. Well, the best thing to do, and I've been working with Sam Crosby out of Baldwin County and others to push this forward. And the best thing to do was to put Robert E. Lee's birthday in the month of his death, which was October, which ended up being on Columbus Day, which is, is a national holiday, but not a state holiday. But then it wouldn't cause a new holiday in the state of Alabama. So it was a win-win-win-win-win, and one of the most bipartisan pieces of legislation introduced this session. We will be back with it next session, and look forward to that bill passing and separating those holidays. So whoever support those men will have their own day.
Right.
As we know, Martin Luther King should definitely have his own day. So with that, I will turn it back over to Representative Daniels.
Well, certainly appreciate your leadership, Black Caucus, in bringing all these groups together, especially with the trying times that we were experiencing. And so being able to bring all of the various groups together to really set the tone for the agenda of this legislative session, we certainly appreciate your leadership and value your friendship. But in closing, I'll have our Senate Caucus Chair, Senator Linda Coleman Madison, who's been working extremely hard on ensuring that maternal mortality and research in that particular area is a priority for all of Alabama. And she'll talk about the successes for that and in other bills that she deemed as important in the Senate. So without further ado, our caucus chair in the Senate, Senator Linda Coleman Madison.
Thank you. Well, good morning. I want to just ditto all of the things that's been said because I know it's all good. Someone said that we're a small group, but we are a powerful group. Just in keeping with everything that's been said, they say a rising tide raises all boats. And that's where we are. From everything that you have already heard about all of the things that we are doing, we are about raising votes. And some of the pieces of legislation that we are pushing, again, Representative Daniels mentioned the maternal mortality. That is very important because we know that 70% of women who died after giving childbirth are having issues. That didn't have to happen. And so right now, what started out as a volunteer committee working with the maternal mortality is now one that the governor has funded. We hope that this will continue. We are working with medical agencies throughout the state. We're working with the Department of Health, which is houses that particular program. And we are seeking to educate and intervene into the death of many women that don't have to die. One of the ways that we can do this is the expansion of Medicaid.
Yes.
Again, a rising tide raises all boats. And if we are truly concerned about the life of people, all people, we should be concerned about the ones that give life, and that's women. And so we will continue to work vigilantly work on that so that we can continue to promote that program and fund it fully so that we can save lives, not only of the mothers, but the child as well. Now, one of the pieces of legislation that I want to just briefly mention is the expungement bill. Again, we listen at Senator Figgers, who talked about all of these things, that we are trying to give people a second chance, to give people hope. Well, that's what that program is all about. We know that there are many people who have things on their record that they have not been able to get off, to get erased. And this has prevented just countless thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of